Big Finish's 60th anniversary Doctor Who celebratory event, Once and Future, is well underway. We've already reviewed the previous two installments, Past Lives with the 4th Doctor, The Artist at the End of Time with the 5th Doctor and the Curator, of course, and now we're at number 3, A Genius for War with the 7th Doctor. So, the premise of Once and Future is that the 8th Doctor at the beginning is hit by a degeneration weapon whilst engaging in the Time War, which is causing him to fluctuate between previous incarnations played by their respective actors in the Big Finish universe, including Sylvester McCoy, the 7th Doctor. He has been summoned by the Time Lords because they've had a message from Davros that he's been locked up on the Dalek prison planet and is wanting to betray the Daleks, is wanting to give the Time Lords some sort of secret in order to win the war, in order to end the stalemate that is meant to be ending in mutually assured destruction for the Time Lords and also the Daleks. We've got the Commander, played by Ken Bones, and we've also got Veclin, played by Beth Chalmers, who are very surprised to see the 7th Doctor appear from the TARDIS, because this is not the incarnation that is meant to be involved in the Time War. But Davros could not really care less as to which version of the Doctor is going to rescue him. He has been put in a Dalek prison planet and has broadcast a message to the Time Lords with this offer. He has allowed the 7th Doctor and Veclin into the prison planet in order to rescue him, and they've got some choice words for each other. Let's play a clip from A Genius for War.
We haven't decided to help you yet.
But the fact that you are here demonstrates that your superiors are interested in my offer.
It is a trifle hard to swallow, though, that you would betray your beloved Daleks.
I once allied myself with the Thals against the Carlets. My own people defied my will, so I provided their enemies with the means to bring about their destruction.
I remember. I was there.
You will also recall that I have led insurrectionary forces against the Supreme Dalek.
I must admit, you have form.
Which brings me to my current incarceration. I offered the Daleks the chance of unity, with me as their Emperor.
And instead, they locked you in a prison moon.
So you appreciate I do not just desire my freedom. I desire revenge on those responsible for my betrayal and humiliation.
That at least is plausible. What exactly are you offering the Time Lords?
I have some propositions, but I cannot divulge the details until my liberty has been restored.
Of course not.
Or I could simply be dissembling. The only way you will find out is if you assist my escape. Could you bear not knowing?
You know me too well, Davros.
As you know me, Doctor.
So this story, A Genius for War, you need to think of it less as a 7th Doctor story or just a general Big Finish Gallifrey Time War story, as it is mainly just a trip down memory lane for a bunch of aspects of the 60 years of Doctor Who that revolve around the Daleks. There's a really great misdirect early on where you think that maybe they've landed on an earlier Skaro similar to the Genesis of the Dalek setting, where you've got the Carlids, and the 7th Doctor interrupts the guy who's trying to do our battle cry will be total. He interrupts that guy, and you think that that's going to be the setting of the story, but it's a really cool misdirect early on. But you've also got, of course, Terry Malloy reprising the role as Davros, a role who he has been playing for, no joke, about 40 years. His first appearance was in Resurrection of the Daleks in 1983, 1984. You've also got, of course, the Time War. You've got Ken Bones, who is in the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who as well, as the General in the Day of the Doctor. You've got the Supreme Dalek and the Bronze Daleks from the revived series of Doctor Who, voiced of course as usual by Nicholas Briggs. It's basically a really cool trip down memory lane for Dalek history in Doctor Who. That stuff is a great success for A Genius for War, and also the strangest reference as well to the history of Doctor Who is, I'm tempted to not go into it too much because there's been nothing in the marketing for it, but it does seem to be all that everyone's talking about on social media for A Genius for War, so I'll only briefly touch on it. it seems like a genius for war is very interested in rehashing the hybrid prophecy that was first established in Series 9 of Doctor Who, The Magician's Apprentice / The Witch's Familiar Season 9 opener, where the 12th Doctor visits Davros, and Davros starts talking about the Gallifreyan prophecy of the hybrid, which later on becomes the series arc for that respective series. It mainly frustrated me because the hybrid as a story arc never made any sort of sense, and it also reminded me that, oh boy, Stephen Moffat actually forgot what he was establishing in that season opener when it came to the season finale, because A Genius for War talks about these two warrior races, Time Lords and Daleks, maybe becoming the hybrid, and then Moffat just completely forgot over the course of the rest of the series. Have you seen the trailer for Genius for War? Actually, yeah, 2 secs, let's bring that up. Genius for War trailer. I won't play the full thing. There we go, here's the Dalek Emperor.
The Dalek Emperor has accused me of treason.
Very cool. A great, amalgamation of the second Doctor, Evil of the Daleks Emperor, and the revived series Emperor Dalek from Parting of the Ways and Bad Wolf. That's a really, it's a very simple, amalgamation, the legs with the body of the classic Emperor, but it's very effective. It looks very, very cool. I don't think the Emperor actually appears in the story at all, though. This is a Davros and Dalek Supreme power struggle story where the Emperor is mainly mentioned, but that's not an issue as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so A Genius for War is a decent Time War, anniversary story. Great performances from Sylvester McCoy, who is just, firing on all cylinders. And he seems to bring a different gravitas to him whenever he's got a Dalek story. Just the amount of venom that he has for these Pepper Pots, these, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hates Club Band, as he called them in Scream of the Daleks last year. Angrily Bins. Which, I don't like that story, but those are some great lines. Some great insults. Why does my voice give out the second I try and do a Sylvester McCoy impression? The issue with A Genius for War is that it's very, very plot heavy. There's very little actual character beats or moments for these characters to, simply breathe and interact with each other in an interesting capacity. I can't remember the last time Sylvester McCoy and Terry Malloy, that rhymes, actually went face to face with each other in a Big Finish story. I'm going to quickly look that up, actually, and also just give my voice a quick breather. Oh dear, that really got me. Davros and the 7th Doctor haven't been in a story or a box set together for nearly 10 years, and then when they finally do have an appearance with each other in Once and Future A Genius for War, they hardly actually interact with each other. Davros isn't really in that. Okay, so you actually have to go a bit further back then? Daleks Among Us, maybe? Either way, I think the point still stands either way, that it's been a long time since Terry Malloy and Sylvester McCoy have acted opposite each other in a Doctor Who story, and then when we finally get to one in Once and Future A Genius for War, they don't really have that many scenes together. It is so focused on moving the plot forward, breaking Davros out of prison, then the Daleks try and collect him. Davros is negotiating with the Time Lords about potentially genetically engineering the hybrid in order to end the Time War in a way that prevents mutually assured destruction. I do like how involved Ken Bones as the General gets in this story, though. He's always been really good in the War Doctor box sets and the Time War box sets generally, but very rarely does he actually properly get involved in the action. But here he is front and center. He is kind of him and Veclin are the 7th Doctor's companions in this story, and they do come across really, really well. I think that the performances are really strong, and the dialogue is great as well. It's just one scene after another, bam, 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 really kinetic and really forward-moving. There's a lot of momentum to A Genius for War, but because there's so few actual character beats, because there's so few actual interactions with the 7th Doctor and Davros, or the 7th Doctor and the Daleks generally, or much engagement with the Doctor and the Time War, it means that when the story is over, there's not really an awful lot to chew on. I know that these are meant to be spectacle-driven crossover anniversary events, but at least The Artist at the End of Time, for example, was about, the preservation of Doctor Who's history and how fandom sort of creates and makes art around the Doctor Who universe, and how that's personified through the curator, for example. It's a little bit surface level in the story, but it's there. It makes you think about it. I listened to Once and Future yesterday or the day before, and honestly I couldn't really tell you much about it other than the hybrid was referenced, and it actually did some interesting stuff with it. Certainly some more interesting stuff than Stephen Moffat did during his 12-episode run of it in Series 9. But honestly, there's just not an awful lot to it. And also, because of the way it ends, because it is the Doctor doing a Time War mission, he's not really going to have much of a recollection of these events, meaning that in terms of the broader Once and Future storyline, there's not an awful lot here that's actually plot relevant, or at least as plot relevant as a crossover 8-part event like Once and Future can be. Now, it was a decent, fun story, but there's really not a lot on its mind. It doesn't give the actors as much to work with as I think they're capable of working with, but they do their best with the material, though. What about the rice pudding? There's a severe lack of rice pudding, unfortunately. It's solid, it's good, I enjoyed it, but I do think it's the weakest of the 3 so far. Even though it's still good, it's still solid, I'd recommend it as like if you've got £9 to spare for a download version. The interviews are great though. Like if you did have the cash for a download edition of Genius for War, the special edition, the behind-the-scenes interviews are really, really great. Sylvester McCoy and Terry Malloy talking about how they got involved in the franchise. Ken Bones and Beth Chalmers as well talking about how they first got involved in the Doctor Who universe. A lot of references and adoration for John Hurt as the War Doctor. Really cool stuff. But, there's just, in terms of A Genius for War, the actual story, there's not a lot of there. How do you fail in a 7th? No, they didn't fail. Fail implies that they really, really tried in terms of here's a 7th Doctor Time War story. They didn't. They just thought, this is the 7th Doctor. We're going to plop him in this hour-long Time War story that's sort of on the fringes of the war that happens to involve Davros. That's not going to have universe-shattering stakes. And that's kind of going to be it. It explains how Davros knew about the hybrid when we get to Series 9 with the 12th Doctor, but that's kind of it. A Genius for War was fine. There just wasn't an awful lot to it, which is disappointing. Even if you're not going to have a lot thematically on your mind, even if you're not going to do that much dramatically, just up the amount of 7th Doctor and Terry Malloy in the story, them directly engaging with each other. There's a lot of Tom Baker, and there's a lot of Peter Davison and Colin Baker in the first 2 stories. Not a lot of McCoy in this one, which is very surprising. Even in the clip I played, McCoy doesn't have that many lines. You'd think he'd maybe have a bit more to say to Davros and the Daleks and the Time War. I don't know. It was good continuing the Once in a Future event. It does the job fine, but I feel like this one should have aimed significantly higher, considering the setting, considering the cast, and considering the premise. Next up, next month, we've got Once and Future 2's Company, written by Lisa McMullen. So we've got the 6th Doctor, an older Harry Sullivan, Jackie Tyler, and Lady Christina. How on earth those 4 dartboard targets, which clearly the Big Finish darts landed on, how on earth those 4 things come together? I'll be very interested in seeing how on earth that pans out.